these days they have to do a lot of outsourcing, I think, for some of their art assets and things like that. But the actual team is not the sprawling, huge team like you see with like Bungie on Destiny or like the Assassin's Creed teams that famously have these like hundreds of people on their team. Yeah. Naughty Dog's core creative team is relatively contained, several dozen people at any one time, and every one of them really committed to their craft and to what they're doing. I think they attract some of the best people in the industry, and a lot of it's that. Just they got the ball rolling and they're working their asses off back in the 2 days. And it's like people want to put that out on the resume, only the best are allowed. And it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy, it's just ball rolling downhill, coupled with Sony having a lot of faith because of a really perfect track record and just writing crazy checks, right? Yeah, we get the time. I think that's the case. I mean, there are moments in Uncharted 4, as there were to a certain extent with Last of Us, but I think even more with Uncharted 4, where you're like, that 5 seconds of gameplay must have cost so much money and so much time, and like just to communicate this one thing. Sometimes things that like you might not even be guaranteed to do, right? Like just to think that your character might happen to go over to this one place and do, and you just invested in that, like that 5 seconds. Like I walked over there and looked at this thing and created this beautiful and like he panned the camera and done all this awesome stuff that it makes you realize the investment that was involved to put together something like this. Yeah. So anyway, I think in answer to your question, it's not the people that are involved that makes them able to do that primarily. It's probably more work than we would like to believe that a game developer has to put in. Crazy I am praising all the things about Naughty Dog and about the products they put out. We're not having a conversation right now about what it means to be a game developer right now and to be a good game developer and the problems that creates. I worry about studios like Naughty Dog and the hours they have to put in and what the effects that has on things like a family life and that kind of stuff. We talked about that exact issue on this podcast with Jason Rubin in that interview. The way Naughty Dog started was just insane. And I don't think much has changed. And that's very possible. I'm not on the ground there. I'm not going to make any conclusions regarding that. But it's hard for me to believe that a game like this comes together without that kind of with a team that's small and focused and core, without just crazy hours. I worry about that. But ultimately, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the final product of the game is fun, and that is it's really good. So Ryder last week on the podcast, about 3/4 of the way through the conversation, he threw out this nugget. But I mean, it's the best looking game I've ever seen in my life. But anyways, and I'm curious like what your take on this. For me personally, it was a game you reviewed that holds that crown, which is Order 1886. I think that game is stupid good looking. And so, is Uncharted 4 really the best game you've ever seen? Order 1886 is a remarkably good looking game in still frame in some sense. Okay. I don't know that it has the same beauty and emotion that Uncharted animation is. Okay. It's not just animation, it's the way that art integrates with animation. This is sort of hard to define thing that's not just about the art, not just about the discipline of animation or the discipline of art, but the way that it's tied together and the ways that small interactions in this game create a sense of immersion on a moment-to-moment basis.
Seems to be like the theme of this podcast is that game design should just say quoi. There's something in there.
There are things that are hard to define. They're not impossible to define. They're complicated to talk about, though. And Uncharted 4 has had those conversations. And we can have those conversations, but they're complicated. I mean, you're talking about the ways that there's a moment in Uncharted 4, this is going to sound like a really small, simple thing, but you have to think about it as like one tiny thing, and that this kind of thing is reflected throughout the entire game. The moment in Uncharted 4 where you're driving a Jeep, and you can get in and out of the Jeep. And if you get in, it's on whether you went in the driver's side door, or you went in the passenger door, or if you came over the hood, or if you came in from the back end of the Jeep, all of those things have been accounted for, even though any one of them might never be seen by the player.
And it's not like other developers don't think of this stuff. It's
But
just
it's
really expensive.
budget, absolutely.
Like I saw a developer tweet out today, I forget who it was, but it was a compilation of all of the awesome times that Nathan Drake and Uncharted 4 have touched the walls. Like it's been a thing, I think it's in the last couple of Uncharted where he's reached a wall and just reach out and touch it real quick. And it's such a subtle thing, but it looks so smooth and so natural. Even you think of like, the killing animations in Last of Us and how it incorporates the environment dynamically wherever you're at. It's just crazy detail.
And it's those little things that taken together lend the ability for Reiner to say like, oh, this is the prettiest game ever. Right? It is beautiful. I mean, just the environmental art in still is great, but it really is the way that it integrates with what you're doing in the world, in the sense that every action you might take has been accounted for, and you feel like you're making decisions that result in these things happening that are really visually compelling.
Yeah. And if you're interested in more Uncharted 4 talk, because it seems like there's a lot to unpack here, keep in mind that May 26th, with that episode airing that day, we're kicking off the next Game Informer GI Game Club, where we're going to be breaking down Uncharted 4. So if you want to play along with us, I would strongly encourage you to play up through Chapter 10 for that first episode. We're not going to spoil anything beyond that. I think a strong majority of the people sitting in on it, which in theory actually could be quite a few editors, which will be fun. We're only going to play that far. Hey, did we figure out if you mean beat Chapter 9 and stop, or beat Chapter 10? Up through Chapter 10. So finish Chapter 10. Finish Chapter 10. I don't know what it is or why that's a dividing spot, but that's what Reiner recommended, is going through Chapter 10. So play through Chapter 10 of Uncharted 4 if you'd like, and then on May 26th with that episode, we're going to have a big old discussion all about it. So be sure to send any feedback, those little details that you notice. If you think you can define the je ne sais quoi, please email it to podcast@gameformer.com and let us know what you think of Uncharted 4 up until that point. But we should probably move on to something else. Kyle, as quick as you can possibly convey, tell me about Pocket Card Jockey.
Horses, solitaire, humor.
This is 3DS Pokemon developer Game Freak. Yeah, this is weird.
Are you doing like a poetic thing right now? Like
That's
a lot of
what
haiku?
Yeah. No, it's like, so, quickly, I guess, you race horses, and the way you, gather up energy during the race is you play solitaire quickly and well, and you can sort of build up all this energy, then in the final stretch, you can kind of expend all that energy to make it through the finish line.
Is it free to play? Is it fun?
No. Yes. It is. It's not free to play. And it is fun. So I'm trying to keep there's some other aspects of the game. Like you get new horses. Like every time they age up, once they do 3 or 4 races, you can either go into mature races and race with your older horse, or you can get a new horse. And then horses die, Kyle. They retire. I haven't killed any horses yet, but they do go to a farm, and you can go visit that farm. So it's not just some lie that's still there. And then you can have those horses breed actually. So if you have 2 really good horses,
We've seen Silicon Valley.
yeah, okay. It's fun and it's cool. The one sort of hurdle that I've come across is that I crossed this line where it got insanely difficult, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong all of a sudden. Did you forget how to play solitaire? No.
Did you forget how to make horses? Never mind.
No, please continue. But the price, it's weird things. All of a sudden the prices in the shop to buy items that help you race faster quintuple. And if you did,
But there's no real money.
no, it's not a free-to-play game at all. Yeah, and the other thing is there's this guy that there's the horse that teaches you how to play. His name is Horse Off Course. He will. There we go.
There's good game writing, you idiots. Just write that stuff.
He will come in and give you pointers for hey, well, you got a bad start this time. You gotta play better at solitaire.
So he's a horse.
He is a
I want to
horse.
take
Of
a step
course,
back
Miller.
here.
But even he will come in and he'll be like, you know what? You did really well that time. I don't have the advice for you. The other horses were just faster.
How does the fiction explain that he can talk to you?
Don't worry about it, man. They put peanut butter in it, and then somebody talks.
Yeah, it's like Day the Tentacle. There's talking horses all over the place in games. You just never ask questions.
Is it like a magic thing going on?
I think so. You do die in the beginning, and then you come back to life.
This is
what I heard.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Okay, Driver San Francisco-esque.
Yeah, that's you die. Yeah, a horse. You fall off your horse.
by a horse?
You get trampled by a horse, and everything's black, and this guy brings you back to life, so you can continue to be a jockey.
I would want to get away from a horse.
No, man, that's your dream.
You gotta get back on the horse.
That's okay.
It's your that.
But I like the humor in it. It's funny because like you'll lose a race, and your trainer will just be like very sarcastically.
You're
like,
undead?
Yeah, you come back to life. I don't know why I'm confused by this.
You're undead.
You're hollow, I think is how they phrase it.
right?
Oh, I don't think you're undead. I think you
eat brains, Kyle?
you don't eat brains, and your skin looks normal. So no, I don't think you're undead. I think you just are given life again.
So that's
Resurrected.
Yeah.
this pocket card jockey. The other big Game Freak announcement this week. Pokemon Sun and Moon trailer. Kyle, your Pokemon reviewer, I'm curious what your take on that is.
I like what I saw. I like the new. It looks like they changed the models for the protagonists, like the characters in the world and stuff.
Yeah, a little more complex, a little more detailed.
Yeah, and that's like I guess it's kind of a small thing to call out, but I mean, you look at that character the whole game, so it's nice to see them improved a little bit there. I like the new setting.
Hawaii.
The starters are cute. I like the kitten because I like cats, but everyone seems to like the owl.
The owl wearing the bra is pretty cool.
Everybody hates Poplio, the seal. No one cares about him.
That thing.
Yeah,
Really, you know the lore of Pokemon's world, how each game it's set in a different real world location.
Inspired by.
Yeah, so they kind of take that geography and make the twist on it. Oh, so you knew about that.
I knew about that.
You don't love Pokemon. I'm a little bit worried showing in that trailer all the different camera angles because Game Freak is not the strongest company. Technically, they're no, Naughty Dog. And so, like, seeing the variety of camera angles, I just worry because
I didn't see a lot other than just like the straight over the shoulder.
there's some where it's much lower, there's some where it's higher up, but just the camera moving the city and exit line, I understand it. First time out of the gate, people have been yelling at me on Twitter about it, but it was such garbage. Like, them trying to embrace that 3D ability. I guess in 3DS.
It does look lower behind you because like even X and Y, like the majority of the game was lower in basically.
Start out this game by dying, and you're brought back to life.
It's just Game Freak's thing. The bad is all the games from now on, you die and kill your but they might have. Sure, you can use it and read something like that.
But I'm excited. So it doesn't look like a dramatic, like to be just kind of consistent. But it looks cool.
Last Pokemon game on 3DS. Is nobody now?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I mean, considering Black and White 2 came out on DS, and the 3DS had been out for like 2 years at that point or something.
It was really crazy.
It's not the last one 3DS. Okay.
Speaking of last one, we should briefly touch on this Disney stuff. Really crazy news broke on Tuesday about Disney announcing, in its investors call and whatnot, that they are not going to make any more Disney Infinities. They're shutting down Avalanche Software, and they are only going to license out Disney Infinities. They're not going to have video development, which is so crazy to have a company as big as Disney not engaging with this whole media. They've been, it's unfair to call it dabbling, but they've been trying. People are really pushing it firmly. They've done great stuff like Split Second. I mean, there's a long history of Disney occasionally making good stats in game development, and just to finally kind of put the nail in the coffin on their attempts this crazy time.
Yeah, I don't understand what's going on there. It does seem, especially now, that they have so many of the properties that rule the world under their banner, right? For them not to invest heavily in internal development just seems crazy.
Well, the detail here to think about is, they have properties such as Frozen, which is gigantic, surpassing Angry Birds even. And they release a game where it's Frozen free fall on iOS, and it just makes bank. And so at that point, why have this development studio out in Salt Lake City and employ 300 people to make these Disney Infinity games that, as Kyle and I visited, and we were just talking about this morning, have that confusing release strategy where there's so many different packages and experiences and try to convey all that in marketing bullet points. You can't get it across that easily.
The one example that I brought up this morning is like one of the things we saw when we went on the car trip was what was basically mounted to like a Disney car racer that was developed by the guys that did Sega, the good Sonic car racer. There is a game that exists that is a Disney car racer that uses all Disney and Star Wars characters, and like I don't even really know how to get it. Like
If I put a gun to your head and
I think maybe it's DLC, like which is stuff like that. Like it wasn't clear exactly how there were all these cool. They brought in all these developers with these working like aspects of Disney Infinity, and it was hard to break down, and it was a children's game.
But we're talking about like one very specific game, totally in the wider sphere of like all the games you could make with Marvel and Star Wars, Disney characters.
And it's not that there's not going to be any more Star Wars games, because like we just talked about earlier, they're still licensing out their stuff, just not internally.
Make dumb mobile stuff that makes you billions of dollars.
Including their strategy of like taking popular mobile games and attaching Disney licenses to it.
And then just license out the other games like you do Star Wars.
Here's Bob Iger, CEO of Disney. Here's his quote. He's doing pretty well. He had this to say in Mike Futter's write-up.
Wrote into the podcast.
Yeah, this is from Bob Iger from California.
Dear man, I really like your podcast.
Stop saying crap so much. We thought we had a really good opportunity to launch our own product in that space. I realized it was console space, but it was also essentially a large component of it was the Toys to Life stuff. In fact, we did quite well with the first iteration of it, and we did okay with the second iteration. But that business is a changing business, and we did not have enough confidence in the business in terms of it being stable enough to stay in it from a self-publishing perspective. We actually made a good product. I give the developer a lot of credit for the product that they made. It was extremely well received. The truth of the matter is that the risks that we saw at the beginning when we started this caught up with us.
Yeah, I kind of got, I don't know, reading Iger's quote in Mike's story, like, I got the sense that they were like, this is just too expensive. Like, we're making money, but we're just putting so much into it.
It's like Polygon has a cover story all about the history of Epic, and it feels very much like Epic's conclusion. Read that story, they quote talking about, Epic thinking about Gears of War 4 and doing the math, and just realizing there's no universe where we can make a lot of money off this. Best case scenario, we break even if we invest $100 million in this thing. Game development's tough. Yeah. But it's sad to see Avalanche Software go to his.
I really like, I was really starting to get into Disney with my daughter and stuff like that. I've been playing a lot of 3, and I've shelved with all the figures.
And Bob Iger canceled your daughter.
He canceled my daughter. She's not grown up anymore. She's done. She stopped there. She's gonna have to make do with her 2 Zootopia Disney Infinity figures. But she was just showing to her grandparents on Skype the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you sit her down and explain what happened?
No, not yet.
But
We'll save that.
yeah, it's sad. We had
No Easter Bunny, no Disney Infinity, no Santa Claus.
I remember months ago on this podcast we had Jonathan Yaki from Disney on talking about Disney Infinity 3. He's one of my favorite people because he works for Disney and he screamed out the podcast FU, which is
he was in our Kingdom Hearts 2 episode replay, which is
Yes!
recent also.
That's right, yeah. A super nice guy, and he had a bunch of tweets. Like, I'd love to talk more about this. I can't really yet. He's very emotional. It's very well, yeah, sure. He then tweeted out a GIF. I'm gonna effing cry just thinking about this. It's the GIF from Toy Story 3 of all the toys going towards the Inferno, and the GIF does not include the alien saving them. That is his analogy for Avalanche Software closing: is toys holding hands going towards their death.
Accepting the inevitable mortality.
Lord, it was excruciating to like connect those dots. Pixar film and the current situation at Disney, but we put up a lot of content for Disney Infinity 3. One of them was an interview with the general manager of Avalanche Software, John Black, super smart guy, and he's been in the industry forever. But there's a 20-minute interview with him just talking about the history of licensed games. And I went back and watched it again, and it's brutal. Like, he talks about just what a tough business it was, and it was just one Hail Mary after the other trying to stay in business. And then they finally got Disney Infinity, and they're like, maybe this is a package that'll be sustainable for development going forward. Turns out, not so much. So then there were 2 Lego Dimensions and Meepos, I guess. Oh, Skylanders. I guess there's the giant Skylanders. Yeah, Meepos are a little different because they're less true. They're almost like, they're just sort of secondary to the core games. Yeah, definitely. But sad week for the industry.
It is. It feels like if a longer view would allow Disney to see that like gaming's not going away, and it is worth your while to invest now. It was worth your while to invest 10 years ago. It is more worth your while now to invest, even if you're not seeing immediate return, just for the mind share you gain by having some students, well cultivated studios that have had a few years to ramp up and have some franchises that they ramped up on. Yeah. But
got some hot emails from people that watch.
Hot emails? Well, we already read Bob's, so yeah.
I think it was Josh again.
Bob, I know.
Lord, I'm sorry.
Callback.
I'm sorry.
Well, Josh's was good too.
Who can say if Bob Iger's going to win Question of the Week? Because whichever email we like the best, we choose email of the week and we send him out a mysterious, lovely gift. Okay. All right. So kicking things off. Hi guys and gal. Kim finally on yet? She was just on a couple weeks ago. She's great. Doug here from Fort Collins, Colorado. Love the podcast. What you do? Keep it on. First, quick question. When is Sir Matt Miller updating his Destiny lore guide? That guide is amazing.
Did he really ask that?
He really did.
I want to do that.
You want to just explain what it is for people?
Yeah, so we did. I think it's fair to say that the Destiny lore is a thing that you either care about or you don't. But I think the evidence suggests there's a lot of people who do care about it, and I think Bungie would be wise to recognize that. Because when we posted this big article that was a sort of a summary of all the Destiny stuff,
This is not a breezy summary.
it's not a breezy summary. I mean, it's like 10 pages of content.
As we've talked about, Miller printed out the Grimoire cards.
I did a lot of research on this thing.
Yeah.
But like we had like 1 million people almost who checked this story out, and so yeah, I want to go back to it. The part of the trick is that I didn't want that story to just be like, well, here's Miller's interpretation of stuff. I wanted to write it and then spend the time to work with Bungie to make sure we had it right.
That was just something cover story trip, right?
Yeah, at the time it was connected to us doing coverage for the Taken King, and so at the time there was a sense of like there's this wealth of lore out there that has been there, but a lot of people, I mean, a lot of the people even who play this game a lot don't know virtually anything about
developed the game.
It's possible, and so I wanted there to be a chance to work with the story team at Bungie to see, like, okay, do I have this right? And they corrected me on some stuff, like that final version that's posted online reflects the changes that Bungie said, like, well, you don't actually have this right. This isn't. You talk about the Titans when for the Titan Guardians first showed up, they did this thing. That's not how it worked. Like, and so we made those changes before we published it with the goal of there being if lengthy, at least still a digestible version of the fiction.
So we need to wait for a time when we have a lot of contact with Bungie developers again.
That's the hope. And so I do plan to update that story or do a new version of the story that reflects both the Taken King stuff, and hopefully sometime soon we'll get an idea of where they're going next, and so we can get we can orient the update of that story towards like, well, this is what's coming, right, and this is why this is important for you to know about it.
Gotcha.
So we'll see.
There we go. Paul Sirik from Grand Rapids, Michigan writes in and says, after watching this week's Many Missteps of Battleborn test chamber, it got me thinking, when you go out on trips and are shown a developer's game in progress and they ask for feedback, is it ever difficult or uncomfortable to give them the hard truth that maybe what they're working on just plain looks like garbage? That is not a thing.
That's not a thing we say to any developer. And
First of all, it's rare if I don't think it's ever happened. We've gone on a cover story trip and thought this looks like garbage.
And we first of all, we before we go on a cover story trip, we learn about a game and we try our very best to find games that we are excited about, that we want to share with the readers, that we are enthusiastic about. And that includes Battleborn.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
because like my ultimate opinion of the final game is not super hot doesn't mean that we didn't at one point really believe a lot in that project and want to share it with people, and that's why we did the story on it. Nor would we ever be the kind of jerks to say this is garbage to anybody who works as hard as game developers work.
Do you guys have situations in mind though where people have asked for feedback and you've had to be like, this part of the game, I don't know if I'm feeling.
Maybe with like PR people, like at a show, like at an E3 situation, they're like, what do you think? And I would, if there was, I'll be like, usually I would temper it. Be like, I like this part. This part didn't really appeal to me very much. I've done that like on occasion.
And this is a personal thing. It's not like you saying change this.
Yeah, it's like I didn't really like how the shooting felt there or something like that. That's not a real example, but you know,
Shooting.
yeah, write that down.
I also think that for people who play a lot of betas, like real betas, not those like marketing betas, but like real betas that are about like let's figure out how to improve this game, are maybe familiar with this, but certainly for those of us who work in the press, who sometimes see games very early while they're still in development, you learn pretty quickly that a game can go from this is not fun, this does not look good, this does not play well, to this is a great game in the space of like a month or a couple months. And so even sometimes we will have previews of stories, preview stories for games that are a couple months out that we're still like, yeah, you know, like about this, it's pretty cool. And then, you know, you play the final version in its totality and it doesn't work.
Yeah, but I mean, even on every cover short trip, there's something to get excited about. There's something cool to kind of focus in on. I just have like a laser beam focus for specific things in games. I really, really like some things. Like I remember on the Disney Infinity trips, to tie it all together, I remember seeing like the lighting and the design of the X-Wing and the Falcon in the space combat stuff. I still think it looks amazing. And when they showed us that, I was like, okay, that design looks so great. And the figure design in Disney Infinity specifically, I think is amazing.
Well, and then you share my enthusiasm for just like what developers do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, a lot of times when we go on these cover stories, just the people who work at these studios, if you make a choice to go into game development, the time sacrifice that you're going to make and the hard work you're going to put in and the disciplines you've got to learn and then finding out how to work with other people, these are really interesting, really creative people by and large.
They are all smarter than us.
and like I think a lot of the joy of some of those cover stories and the online coverage we do afterwards isn't always just about the games. It's about like let's look at these people, the work that they do, and highlight that. So even when a game is very early and there's not a lot to say about it, there's often something very interesting to observe about the way that these people do their work, the way they're advancing tech, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. We have Isaac Brady from Coon Rapids, Minnesota. He says, I wrote in a question for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and to my delighted surprise, you read it on the show. It made me wonder really how significant it was that you read my question. How many questions do you get each week? Is it really special when my question is read? Yes, Isaac, it is. An averaging 50 or so emails a week, so you should feel very special. So there you go, Isaac. You're the most special person around. Hey, GI Crew, says Michael from St. Paul. So many Minnesota fans. It's cool. Like, it makes me think that we should just like have like a small Game Informer show get together, like at a brewery or something. So, we did that at the GameStop Expo last year, and it was very stressful. And the acoustics were terrible. We should do it every week. Okay. I would not be opposed to it. If you like for a Game Informer show meetup, where we just meet up and a dozen of us get some beers, I'm more than up for that. So please write into podcast@gameinformer.com. But Michael from St. Paul writes in, he says, I was wondering if any of you are big fans of comics. And if so, do you have any advice for someone wanting to get into them? For a while, I've been wanting to start reading comics, but it's a little overwhelming when there's so much history and so many different storylines. I wanted to ask the GI staff because you guys are awesome and have the correct opinions. Yeah, we can probably skip this question, right, Miller? Yeah, moving on. Let's see. Josh Jones writes in. No, Miller, briefly. Okay.
Come on.
If you have to pick
Well, how about
one comic
what are you reading now that you
that is
like
better than anyone else,
Yeah, I think right now one of my favorite comics is Saga. That comic.
And they start where?
Well, it's not a particularly old comic. Okay. So you start at number 1, and it's a great sort of sci-fi epic, but for grown-ups. It has some grown-up content in it. So
What type of stuff? Kind of
like
sexy
it
stuff we're talking about.
has cussing, it has some nudity, it has some
Full frontal nudity?
Yes, actually it does.
Full frontal nudity?
Nudity.
never seen that.
Saga's a really good comic. If you point me like one thing that's coming out right now, I'd also point people towards just a personal favorite of mine right now. I think Rick Remender, who is a comics writer, has been doing some amazing work in recent years, and he's got lots of sort of independently written books that aren't part of like Marvel Comics or DC or anything like that. You want a good sort of action-packed story with great art. He always works with these great artists. His Black Science, Low, Tokyo Ghost. These are all really, really great. Cool. But there's also the other thing I would tell somebody is it's a really good avenue if you haven't gotten into comics, but you specifically have an interest in that like mass market thing of like the superhero comics.
Let's go specifically. Let's grow in because I think a lot of people saw Civil War.
Yep.
Captain America, and they say, God, I want to absorb that Civil War storyline. Where do I start? How compact is it? What do I need?
So the cheapest and most comprehensive way that if you were just like, I've never read comics, but I love those Marvel movies, or it'd be fun to kind of be in on those conversations about that kind of stuff. Marvel now has a service that you can pay, I think it's like $10 a month for Marvel Unlimited.
Okay.
And you have access. You don't have the most immediate comics that have just come out. It's like 6 months back and older stuff, but they have relatively comprehensive collections of a lot of their like biggest and most interesting stories.
So you can pay $10 and read all of Civil War.
Yes,
Which is how much content? Like how many pages are we talking?
I mean a lot. I mean you're talking. I think they have some. I'm shooting off the cuff here, but I want to say I read somewhere they have something like 17,000 comics that you have access to through that service.
But what about the Civil War storyline specifically?
Yes.
Like how much content is that if you want to get through
God,
that?
I don't know. Civil War was a while ago. I want to say it was 8 issues.